right, so we're going to go ahead and get started for folks. And thank you all for attending. Really excited to talk about this topic. I am sitting here with two sales management experts who help coach new managers, and we're going to talk about how to help new managers spot false pipeline. So I'm your moderator, Kamala Thompson. I'm head of marketing at the RevOps Co-op, 15 years of experience in the RevOps space, and then transitioned over to the dark side, which is marketing. And then Ryan and Samuel, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourselves. Let's start with Ryan.
Yep, Ryan Apps here. I'm our Senior Vice President of our Global Commercial Sales organization here at Sales Loft. I actually joined about 9 months ago. It's almost my 9-month anniversary. After spending almost 9 years leading sales teams and organizations at Concur, I actually got my first opportunity to be a new manager at Concur. And then I got the opportunity to coach a lot of new managers as a RVP at Concur. So this is a very passionate subject of mine and a huge favorite. So I'm really excited to be here.
Sweet. And Samuel.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Samuel Sundaraj, and I am currently the head of go-to-market at Pebble, along also working with several startups in terms of advice and go-to-market expertise. My background is coming in from the Series A and onto Series C. So working with early stage founders, building early stage teams as they look to achieve like the next milestone. So forecasting is near and dear to me, specifically when you're going from a Series B to a Series C type of company. You're looking at predictability and repeatability. So excited to join this panel.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being here. So we're going to jump straight into it. I do, before we start with this next slide, want to set the expectation for folks that we will have a guide and an Excel template at the end of this to help folks who are bootstrapped or on a budget do this without advanced analytics tool. But before we get all the way to that point, I would like to, we're going to talk about which data points, how sales managers weigh the quantitative versus the qualitative, which is an area, the qualitative piece, where ops is often missing a lot of the context, and then how to coach new sales managers to up their forecasting game. And that's where that free workbook will come in. So before we go there, let's talk about how important forecasting has been in your careers. I don't think this can be understated. Samuel, let's start with you.
Yeah, no, I think a big, for me, when I first became a manager, I had a very strong partnership with the finance team, right? And one of the things that I advise new managers is to quickly align well with finance, right? And this could be your director of finance, someone who's responsible for financial planning, and something that's responsible for metrics and KPIs, tracking them at the company, because these are the folks that are reporting, right, to the board. And leadership. And so for me, as a new manager, I quickly understood why it was important to the company, right? Both in terms of planning, headcount, investments going into the next year, and why a quarterly rigor was so critical to the success of the company, right? Now, interesting enough, where I actually learned this was at a publicly held company at Limelight, where we were 600 million a year run rate business, and then my team was responsible for about 50 million of that, right? And so, but again, working with finance very closely to understand, okay, how do you look at pipeline? How do you the difference between quantitative and qualitative? Why is this important, right? And what KPIs do you track? How do you look at deal management, right? And then how do you present the number, the final number, to leadership, right? So, so when the question is posed, why is forecasting so important? It's important for the health of the business. It's important for directionally providing what sort of investments have to be made the next quarter, the next fiscal year, and then ultimately it's the performance of the business. In addition to gaining some credibility with management and the senior team.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, Samuel. Like, of course, now more than ever, right? Predictability is vital for companies,
Yeah.
right? So like accurate revenue forecasting empowers great finance teams to confidently allocate pivotal investments, right? To like ensure organizational health. I think you said that very eloquently. I'll add two different things to it, a little bit of a different flavor, because beyond that organizational level perspective that you outlined, which I agree with you is probably the most important piece. I do think there are two really, really key reasons for new sales managers specifically to master forecasting. One, accurate forecasting to me is always representative of a manager who has methodology and framework driving results. And that accuracy is essentially like the validation of that framework. And assuming that framework is, accurately predicting good to great results, right? There's not as much value in predicting subpar or even poor results, but I can digress into that. But assuming that framework is accurately predicting good to great results, then that's a scalable system. And that's what any revenue manager should seek, a scalable framework for their team that is consistently and dependably excellent. And those two almost always go hand in hand. A sales manager that's super successful but doesn't really know why and doesn't necessarily have a methodology behind the success is, in my experience, very, very often at risk of not repeating that success in the future. So I would imagine every new manager is looking to avoid that by ensuring their AEs have an excellent, scalable approach to prospecting, discovery, and ultimately converting opportunities to revenue. And again, accurate forecasting, particularly if you align with the quantitative and qualitative components that we're going to get to later today, is the validation of that process. And then two, philosophically speaking, I think it's really important as a leader looking to be super successful to emphasize that great AEs and great sales leaders, and heck, great sales organizations, they actively look for risk in their pipeline. And it's important to emphasize this because that is not human nature. Most of us typically tell ourselves like what we want to hear. And there's probably, millions of years of evolution behind that. But in the case of sales pipeline, if we are not actively seeking out and identifying valid risk in each and every deal, we're not truly able to strategize and optimize our ability to win. You're instead just hoping risk will go away and the deal just happens. And that's not a strategy that nets elite performance consistently. It doesn't empower ops to make great decisions. So as a sales leader, you need to be vigorously dedicated to deal review. And it's not to rip your AEs apart or rip their sales process or push them into performance management or anything silly like that. Rather, we're collectively putting multiple eyes on things, right? To identify areas of deal risk, to ultimately create deal health and overall pipeline health. And the big point here is that it's all connected.
Yeah, I think that's a one thing that does stand out with what you said is always assessing for deal risk. And I think that is the blind spot for many new sales managers because you always want to communicate by default, seems to communicate, you always want to communicate good news, right? And so you're always being optimistic, right, by default. And that happened to me earlier in my career, right? It's like I never wanted to communicate bad news. So I wasn't looking for risk. Yeah. So that is a big blind spot.
It is. But I also believe to your point there that the power we have as sales leaders is we don't necessarily have such the emotional attachment to the individual deal, right? So that allows us to have a little bit more of a potentially neutral lens in terms of deal inspection, which benefits everybody in terms of opportunity to win and strategize.
Well, you have a lot of fans, both of you in the chat, for aggressively finding risk. I think an adage I learned on really early on, bad news should travel faster than good news. I can't talk today, excuse me. Really applies here. So hiding a bad number sounds like a terrible idea. Would you both agree with that?
Oof. Yep. Yeah, I mean, Ryan, I'd like to hear your thoughts there, but not delivering bad news fast enough. Yes, you got to get in front of it, right? I mean, there's not much to say to that. And also the why, right? Typically, you'll see this in organizations that have a dependency on larger deals, right? And yeah, and the reason I'm pausing, Kamala, I don't know if you remember the 2015 Q4 at Extra Hop. It was the reason for the big miss was I don't think the regional directors or the regional VPs communicated bad news fast enough, right? So the shock hit 2 days before the quarter, because the miss was like, you missed the number by 50%, but more crazy was the fact that the commit number didn't change until 3 days before the end of the quarter, and it was like, oh, we did not communicate bad news 2 weeks ago when signals were coming in saying, hey, we're not going to sign, and this was like consistent, right? So meta point, get ahead of it.
And I remember a lot of screaming coming from the senior VP's office.
There was angry tequila shots at the end of the quarter. Let's put it. True story.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I think you just nailed it. I mean, I'll go back to what you led with is what I've always seen are great teams, great organizations, are highly adaptable. And if we're delaying bad news, we're taking away people's ability to adapt and still find a way to be successful. So there is no benefit in hiding it, fundamentally.
So again, I want to hear from both of you on this one, but Ryan, let's talk about data points you coach that folks should look at.
Oh man, this is a fun topic. Fortunately, since we only have an hour here, I will try to narrow it down a little bit. Like, I want to preface everything here by saying that the key as a sales leader, and I'm sure this is definitely pandering to the audience, but I really, really believe it, is to work with ops and be really in tune with the metrics that dictate the rhythm of the business. That's what we used to talk about a lot at Concur, is the rhythm of your business. And I really love that term because I think it really accurately represents what we need to be aligned with. And it's especially important to work with ops here because these metrics that I'm calling out here momentarily can vary significantly from company to company, and even within companies, like from market size to market size, and even from core product to core product. So again, to go back to when I was at Concur, our corporate travel platform, our expense management platform, and our AP platforms, our three primary products, all actually had very different rhythms. And each one had separate metrics from each other and by market size. And ideally, as a company, depending on what stage you're at, the ops team, you all have worked to ultimately create some degree of segmentation that helps simplify this analysis. I know not every team has that luxury. But anyway, in terms of the rhythm of the business, I think it was Sprinkler's CRO, Paul Oles, that said it's vital sales leaders be dialed into conversion rates, close rates, inbound flow, pipeline flow, deal pushes, deal value, cyclical components, et cetera, et cetera. So since we only have an hour today, I'm going to pick two of those that I think are really big that sales leaders need to have a strong understanding of to accurately forecast. First one being, as you can see on the screen, is essentially overall average days to close. The second one, win rates. And since I can really never be limited in my ranting within average days to close, I like to know average days of each stage conversion. So like at Sales Loft, our qualified pipeline stages in commercial are discovery, then it's validate and plan, proposing contract, and finally close one. And to me, it's vitally important that I, as a sales leader, and all my sales leaders understand the typical progression from each stage relative to each deal. So I can identify if a deal is moving way too fast or way too slow through the process relative to what we typically see with like a healthy deal, right? And again, overall average days to close and average days at each deal stage both tell that story. Like, here's how, for an instance. If we've got a massive, massive deal, hypothetically, for our business that's reached the proposing contract stage in, say, like 1/5 the time it typically takes to reach that stage. Mm-hmm. It's really important for sales leaders, right, to look at that and start to think about things like, are we sure we've got all the key elements of health in place to ensure that this deal is in a really strong position when it's moving so fast? Or are we managing the sales process in such a way that we're just so excited about the ARR size that we're skipping key components in an effort to just like battering ram this win home in an unnatural fashion. And I know this may sound crazy, but like particularly for new reps or underperforming reps where deals are clearly moving much faster through the stages than is normal, like, are we sure we're even at, say, the proposing contract phase in the buyer's buying process? Like, do we think we're at a specific spot, but really the buyer believes we're way, way earlier in the buying process? And I see this a lot. And like, maybe we just haven't gathered the right information to ensure our processes align. And that's really important from a forecasting accuracy perspective, because I'll tell you, if things are out of alignment, the buying process is going to prove true, not our sales process. And that's going to really impact our ability to forecast. And look, on the other end of the spectrum, if a deal is taking too long, like significantly longer than what we typically see in our space, sales managers need to start asking questions like, is the relatively slow pace reflective of the inherent complexity of the buying process? If so, that makes sense, right? Or are we trying to force a deal here with someone that doesn't have the internal juice to get a deal done? And now we're being strung along in a never-ending buying cycle where we could just take a different strategic approach or allocate that time to other revenue-driving activities altogether. And then to end my rant here, as far as win rates go, these are just vital in understanding this. Like, does the aggregate of weighted pipeline align with the actual forecast, right? So it's really another way to validate pipeline coverage. Again, this might sound simple and people might laugh, but I cannot tell you how often I've seen AEs, for instance, forecast like 100K on 108K pipeline in deals that are all like best case and long shot, right? And our win rates for like best case will be like 31% and long shot will be 12. Right. So it's like, how do you really have a realistic path to get to 100K? And then as you dive in, it's usually one of two instances, right? Like, we've either got a sandbagger here where when deal inspection takes place, we realize these are actually really good deals with verbals and paperwork out for signature. They're just totally in the wrong stage and being misrepresented. Or sadly, more often not, we see a pipeline that's probably actually more like going to give you 30K. And we need to make the strategic decision right then and there to really shift our efforts heavily toward pipeline gen activities.
And Samuel, before we move to you, just really quickly, I want to state that we don't have the really obvious data points on here, like commit, best case, all of those pieces, because we're really focusing on the data points that mature, experienced sales managers know to look at in addition to be able to get a better health reading. So that's why you don't see the typical obvious ones on here. Samuel, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is I prefer to go a little deeper in terms of, so I agree with what Ryan said. In terms of pacing, I also look at the source of the lead, right? There's a difference between demand fulfillment and demand creation. Demand fulfillment is pacing of inbound leads, right? Where somebody raised their hand, they tend to pace differently, right? Versus demand fulfillment, right? Which is, this is where it gets a little, demand creation, which is, this is an outbound deal, right? This is where if you don't understand exit criteria and the entrance criteria for stages, reps get, they just deviate, right, from plan, right? In the sense, the example is, are you sure they have an initiative, right? Is it supposed to be sitting in this stage? And then when you go back and postmortem it, it was an outbound meeting and they took a call and they asked for pricing. Well, just because they asked for pricing didn't mean it was an initiative, right? You didn't qualify better, right? And so now you've got inflated pipeline because you put a dollar amount and it's in the wrong stage. So I also prefer to look at source, right? Because pacing is very different for demand fulfillment versus demand creation.
So I'm going to add a few points as an operation person that I like to look at as well. So pipeline coverage, it was brought up by Ryan, but we have to understand how much pipeline we need in the hopper to be able to consistently hit quota. Pipeline generated in quarter. So I am not just focused on how we're going to hit this forecasted quarter. I want to know how well we're setting ourselves up to hit future quarters. And then I'm also going to look at forecast integrity. So I'm going to be the person in the background who is either snapshotting or writing down or however I can get to it based on the organization I'm in and how they run their forecast. I'm going to be taking notes on where everybody started at the beginning of the quarter, including the senior manager or senior VP. And I'm going to compare where we hit at the end of the quarter to figure out forecast integrity. And that can really, I know that the sales manager probably already knows who their sandbaggers are and who doesn't do what, but this gives me an idea as somebody who isn't as close to each individual deal, who trends in which direction.
I love that. Anytime we can add data to the anecdotal, all the better. So I'm a huge fan of you tracking forecast integrity.
So I love this. This is where I felt in revenue operations that I really had a blind spot, and that was on the qualitative side. I knew what the data was saying. I didn't know why. So let's go back a minute. Let's talk a little bit about your deal review process. I want to make sure that we're staying on course for the time we have, but would love to hear from you. What kind of statements do you get sometimes from RevOps that you need to add context to?
Well, I mean, I think you're covering it right here. I can go on my like qualitative and deal health rant, I guess. I think that's a perfect platform here. I think I saw a comment in the chat. Forgive me if I can't remember who it was, but like there needs to be alignment between qualitative and quantitative, right? Like that's the key in pipeline health. And that's where if you have that alignment, the RevOps shouldn't have to ask for more context, for more clarity. It should be already present within like your CRM system and be pressure testable. Like, you know, obviously we just reviewed some key quantitative components that may like signal deal risk, but like ultimately the classic adage of garbage in and garbage out, like definitely applies to purely quantitative analysis of pipeline if we don't have the qualitative piece, right? Like, and we just need to ensure that again, the quantitative components reflect the qualitative health of each individual deal. And then, of course, the quantitative health of the overall pipeline reflects its actual state. So like, how do we get there is your question. So it's about having a framework for inspection and then ensuring the forecast aligns with like the net of said framework. So clearly, like when I think about individual deal inspection framework, I like to leverage the conceptual framework of MedPIC, but probably in my mind, I've pivoted it to be a little bit more linear. And this is my whole organization kind of does this right now. And it basically boils down to this, like this series of questions as we look through each deal. Do we have implicated pain here? If yes, who owns solving this and what metrics do they care about? Have we won that person over and are they a true champion? If yes, do we understand their decision process and their paper process and the key parties involved there? Do we understand and are we in tune with the competitive landscape? And then most importantly, do we know who owns the discretionary use of budget? And is that person, aka, you know, the economic buyer, is that person engaged? And essentially, like when we're looking at the framework of deal inspection for qualitative health, if we look at the pipeline, what I like to do is start by actually working backwards with the committed deals and then going to like the earlier stage deals. And for us, I think that criteria is really important, right? Like our committed deals need the economic buyer to essentially say, like, if X things happen that are in our control, I will spend this amount of money with you, and the paper process to solidify the partnership is known and actionable. If those things are in place, we are good to committing. Now, if you're validating the linear steps that we outline, this information then, of course, has to align with the key data elements of the forecast, right? Like deal stages, close dates, probabilities, and deal sizes. So like, just a quick example before I get your thoughts, Samuel, like if we've got a deal where we haven't implicated pain, and we're not sure we've got a champion or not, and we have zero engagement with an economic buyer, but because a random contact wanted to see some level of basic pricing, we just fired off a proposal, like that deal should not be in proposing contract with a probable designation to close 5 days from now, right? Like that just doesn't make sense. And we do see that. And the same goes for the other end of things, right? Like I've seen a lot of reps that are frankly seriously scarred from destructive sales leaders. Sales leaders that want to beat up pipeline for the sake of it, or take control of the deals out of ego, or a variety of other very negative sales leadership tactics. And most of these reps end up sandbagging high quality deals and low probabilities in far too distant close dates. And so the level of deal inspection and qualitative analysis around like looking at activity level within an opportunity allows us to identify those deals, and then helps us both not only just recategorize them correctly, but more importantly, start to just give a level of a strategic approach to help them optimize that opportunity to win that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
Completely agree. I think there's a couple of things here, right? One is it's so important that the reps understand the framework, right? Whether it's I like the MEDPIC, definitely like the MEDPIC framework, and that's something that managers, leaders should stress 100%. If you need to allocate time beginning of the quarter, right, just spend tons of time, invest in time educating them on that framework, right? Because whether a deal is moving fast, and even if they've got the exec sponsor on the phone, you still want to stick to the plan, right? Which is the framework. And I think when you start doing that, that is when you get good qualitative information, right, or good qualitative visibility into the deal, because now it's following the framework. And the other thing I will say, Ryan, you brought up the reps that end up sandbagging, or even if a deal is properly following the framework, right, they tend to be conservative. I think there's an incentive issue here, right? Because you never hear, when it comes to awards, you never hear about the rep that got the award for forecast integrity, right? And I think organizations need to start looking into that, right? Maybe that's happening, but I haven't heard of it. Right. You never have a rep go up on stage and is given an opportunity to talk about how they maintain forecast integrity for 4 quarters in a row. Right. So with that happening, I think you're going to see more reps, right, start looking at this deeper. The quantitative aspect of things is obviously when back then we didn't have any. We do now, which is an automated way to look at deal sentiment, compare that to probabilities to close and all that. So I don't spend a lot of time on quantitative because I work with RevOps, right? And they can give me insight there. The qualitative is where the biggest blind spot is, right? Because of some of the reasons you brought up. And that's why investing time and educating them on the framework is so critical.
And as someone in marketing leadership or revenue operations, whichever role I may have that day, the biggest red flag for me with a new manager is to not see an enablement plan to get everybody marching to the same methodology. That makes me really nervous. So if you're not seeing that, it's time to start advocating for more enablement.
Highly agreed.
So Ryan, I'm going to let you run with this one, and Samuel, I have one just for you coming up next. But let's talk a bit about situational coaching, particularly as it pertains to sandbagging and how different it looks depending on the rep performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a sandbagging perspective, I think we just kind of covered that piece to it. I think there's just a real strong opportunity to ensure that we're incentivizing the right things and that we've got the right culture of inspection in place for sure. I think you bring up a really interesting point though, in the question in terms of like, how do we approach from a situational leadership perspective, coaching people at different levels of performance for sure. And I think, look, we spend a lot of time talking about deal inspection, and that's obviously vitally important. But I want to emphasize always that like inspection is just ultimately a vehicle to get to strategizing. Like that's where the real magic happens, and that's where the real net benefit to the organization happens, and allows, you know, RevOps to do its job far more clearly. And for me, like sales leaders should have the benefit of at least like one of two things. One, ideally, we've won a lot of deals ourselves, so we know what it takes to win at a high level. And two, we're seeing a huge amount of deals across a bunch of different pipelines. So like the sheer nature of pattern recognition around what's winning and creating risk in deals across the business is a high value point of view that we can bring to the table. So again, to that end, if we're bringing that to the table, assuming we're utilizing the quantitative and qualitative approaches to deal inspection, I really like the framework outlined in situational leadership in terms of how we apply it as leaders to our different people on our team. As to your kind of the point of the question is, I've never really seen a one size fits all approach to leading sales teams ever really work. So without doing a full deep dive into the intricacies of situational leadership, for those that have done trainings on that, you realize there's just like hours and hours and hours that we can get to. But I think an easy framework that's pertinent for this particular discussion is something like this. For your new AEs and your underperforming AEs, I think it's very important, especially with forecasting and deal strategy, that we take a very directive form of approach. Like you dictate the game plan going forward, particularly on high impact deals. This is a great opportunity for people in this grouping to know exactly what's expected of them and to see what good looks like and then to go execute. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also then equally important for your high performing AEs. Like it's exactly the opposite, right? As you uncover potential areas of risk and start to go through those components in the organic deal inspection process and start to formulate a strategy, I think the key is for managers to pull back a little bit and jump into question asking mode, right? And largely spend a lot of time listening. What you'll find with most high performers is this group will mostly answer their own questions and will really develop because of it. And heck, they often even formulate strategies that blow your mind. And you can even add to your tool belt that will help everybody on the team. And then there's kind of the grouping in the middle. I like to do a little bit of a bi-directional motion there, which is we start in question asking mode. And if you find that things get off track, then you can pivot to directive mode and share kind of the rigor of logic behind that directive approach.
And what I like about bringing this up so much is that I think operations can fall into the trap sometimes of thinking that this is a more exact science than it is, but we're dealing with humans, and we're dealing with humans reading other people and where they are. So it's both art and science.
It is.
So Samuel, this is based on a conversation we had prior to this call. I think a lot of us in revenue operations who design compensation plans do recognize that this is a behavioral tool, and sometimes it can have unintended consequences. For those of us who don't design them, it's really important to remember that aspect. So when we were talking, you were speaking about somebody who was close to their number or had already hit their number, not wanting to close in quarters. So if you could go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, this is your classic case of sandbagging, right? Hey, I'm at 80% of my number for the previous quarter. I know I'm not going to get fired, right? So I'm going to push this 100K deal to the next quarter because now my check potentially could be a lot bigger than it was in the previous quarter, right? So I think I go back to, I think it's tied back to things like forecast integrity, right? I think even with top performers, I've seen folks that have sandbagged because they are also commission driven, right? Real true life story where head of RevOps came up to me and said, "Hey, this rep is purposefully sandbagging this deal, and I know why, because they're going to be more next quarter, right? And how do you handle that situation?" And the conversation was exactly that with the account executive. So I I think when this is definitely comp plan gone wrong, but I'm trying to figure out, and I haven't had a good answer yet in terms of how do you fix this, right? The only thing is the conversation with the rep, right? Look, this is a deal that can close this quarter, and it's not your number, it's the company's number, right? And that conversation happened. It went okay, but I could tell that the rep was irritated because, and it kind of was baffling because this rep was such a good rep and seemed to have a lot of maturity, but they still couldn't understand, like, how is this not, my number, right? They saw it in terms of their business, right? And it was their check. And so tended to think not about the company, which really kind of bugged me, right? And so I think when you look at comp plans, you gotta. It's hard to factor all the scenarios, right? I get it, but this is something that definitely, if you're in RevOps, if you're in comp design, you should be thinking about, right, actively. Which is, it's the team goal, right? And sandbagging on purpose is not okay, right? And I think there needs to be a discount or something of that nature when it comes to comp plans. But I haven't found anyone, doing this. And like you said, it's not all about the incentive or the commission, right? So I think this goes back to the foundational pieces that we talked about, right? Things like investing in coaching around forecast integrity. And I would put sandbagging, why is it not good? This is about the company's number. It's not about your number, right? So really getting to that foundational piece of, like, why are we here in the first place is very critical.
And Brittany had a great point in the chat about adding elements into the compensation plan where it's not 100% individual performance and you are
Yes,
giving them
exactly.
a team goal.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've seen bonuses help with this as well, slightly different flavor on that.
Yeah, I would agree with those pieces. And when you all find that perfect compensation model that solves for this, please let me know. I'd love to have that. The one piece I would like to note from a sales coaching perspective is anytime someone starts to, in my opinion, play with the time variable, I guess I'll phrase it well, in a deal, there's almost an element of hubris there that is very dangerous. If there's anything, having been a top performing rep and, all my years in leadership, all my years in sales, if there is one like time, just classic phrase in sales that has always turned out to be true, is that time kills all deals. And I think there's always an opportunity to coach people through that in these particular instances, because what they're really doing is putting their deal in unnecessary jeopardy. And is that jeopardy is that risk worth the added benefit? Almost never. And I think that's a really good opportunity that we have as coaches. I mean, I cannot tell you, I think everybody on this call has seen so many deals that were 100% won, but excuse me, 99.9%, only for something to come out of left field at the last minute. And the more we elongate the process unnaturally, the more it opens window for unnecessary risk.
So, Stephen brought up the flip side of team goals is the drag it offers on earnings if there are a couple of anchors on the team or attrition.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, I'm trying to figure out a nice way to phrase this, moving quickly on underperformers? I know there's so much that goes into that, but maybe a quick comment on how to help balance out this anchor issue.
Yeah, you're referring specifically to team goals, right?
Managing the bottom 10%.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to do it. I think the team bonus is something that, I mean, I don't have a good answer for that, right? I haven't seen it work. In fact, I have seen a lot more drama to that because of that very reason, right? Hey, I'm carrying the team, right? And these 4 reps or 5 reps are not carrying the team, right? And in one example, we actually got away from this team concept because of that very reason. There was more complaining than it actually working, right? Because we had low performers.
Mm.
And I think that needs to, and I'm curious to hear Ryan's thoughts on this. I think that goes back to proper plan design, but you also have to really think about the people element of it, right?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting tightrope to walk here. I think one of the things I'm really proud of here at Sales Loft that we've implemented in my commercial space in the last 4 months is a excuse me, coordinated effort between our people organization, our ops team, and our sales organization to have a data-based decision criteria around performance management and coaching plans, but also around promotions. And I think to your point, Camilla, there is that around team anchors and also, superstars on the team as well, is if we have a data-based approach that is fueled by ops analysis, it allows us to identify those people and then have a swift plan of action toward from a coaching and performance management perspective. And I'm a huge fan of having that type of infrastructure implemented. And I think it solves a lot of these challenges.
All right, so we're going to talk advanced case, and then we're going to get into bootstrapped case. So I'm going to let Ryan run with this portion, and then we'll jump into it with Samuel on the more bootstrapped.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for bringing this slide up. I love seeing it, the animation work. You never know if it's going to. Look, I mean, everybody on this call knows this. Modern revenue is so much about efficiency and spending time in the areas where we can have the biggest impact. And I'm sure everybody on this call has seen countless studies that are super alarming, frankly, from Gartner and Forrester, where the studies fundamentally show that our sellers are spending a ton of time not selling, like on administrative activities and such. And of course, the more time we can get them to strategically approach revenue driving activities, the more revenue they're going to drive. And I think the same sentiment very much applies to sales leadership in forecasting specifically. So it's vitally important that revenue organizations have the instrumentation in place so that revenue leaders can quickly be directed to the quantitative and qualitative opportunity areas in a pipeline. And that way, revenue leaders can spend more of their time coaching to success and having a positive impact on delivery. For instance, on the screen here, thank God, since the animation is working, you can see the various screens that I live in as a sales leader within Sales Loft's own instance of Sales Loft. And the ability for my sales leaders, if you're seeing this screen and looking at it, the ability for my sales leaders and me to jump into the deals table and see things like, say, activity in the last 30 days, right? So like, remember when we were talking about sandbaggers? If I can sort by activity and then see a ton of activity from an AE on an opportunity with a close date way, way, way out, and I can quickly and easily drill into the activity and see things that, like, say, we're multiple demos into this activity, and we just had a pricing conversation yesterday. It's a great way to identify and, most importantly, strategically manage upside deals that, frankly, probably would have gone unmanaged previously because they wouldn't have been seen, and thus would have a higher likelihood to not be won, push, or a variety of other negative outcomes that just make the net outcomes for the business, not just forecasting, but revenue delivery worse. And then beyond that, being able to see items like automated deal score and what comprises that score, and validate that against items like forecast category to ensure that we don't, say, have committed deals with super low deal scores because they're actually in a very unhealthy position. All of this automation and AI-driven instrumentation is extremely valuable from a coaching perspective to be able to quickly and obviously just identify those items by way of instrumentation and then just get right to coaching and strategizing. Like, that's effective efficiency. And then, of course, to round things out, the ability to be able to quickly and easily, like, just make adjustments to things like deal stage or forecast core category or next steps or the key elements, and just have that sync with the CRM just adds to the efficiency wins by way of instrumentation. And look, this is just like the key to me to having everything we discussed today come together both easily, but then, of course, effectively. And that's what's really important here.
So in a companies, before we spend too much time on the next one, and companies, as they grow, there are minimum things that people should be doing to set up for this place. And one of them is what I like to call passive logging, where you're having integrations with calendars, email, all of these things that are working on the background in the background. So there's no thought that the rep has to take. And sometimes that involves really complex data management, like lead to account matching, a lot of these other things that need to take place in order to automate that as seamlessly as possible, so you're not adding drag for your sales team. So even when we go to the scrappy organization spreadsheet solution, there are things you can be doing to set yourself up to get to where Ryan was talking about, such as calendar integrations, email integration, any kind of automated logging that doesn't take any thought is a win. So the QR code will take you to a Google Sheet, and I'm going to exit out of, slideshow mode. And then Samuel, what I'd like to do is talk to you about what I'm seeing here as if this was your sales team, and really go through how I would approach this in RevOps to start off on the right foot. So first of all, I would not call this a scorecard because you haven't asked for it, right? So yes, I can. 1 second. I've been asked for the Google link in the chat, so we will go ahead and send that. Okay. So Samuel, first of all, I would go to you and position this as a learning exercise for myself. If you hadn't asked for it, I would not position it as a scorecard. But basically what I've been trying to do in operations is learn more about the behaviors that lead up to hitting quota. And what I'd like to understand is in some of these patterns I'm seeing, what you're seeing on the qualitative side. So notice we don't have every single aspect that Ryan and Samuel have talked about, such as deal velocity, which is extremely important. And it's important we know average days to close and average days in each stage. What this is doing is really giving me a quick look at who might be disengaging in their role and who might be at risk for attrition. So for example, if I was sitting with you, Samuel, I would want to know more about Ola. And if you've watched Fargo or you're a Bob's Burgers fans, you know where these names come from. But basically, this person I'm seeing, they forecasted to hit quota. They haven't created any opportunities and they've logged a ton of meetings.
Yeah.
So I'd want to understand from you, are they newer? Are they having problems understanding what's qualified, or are they logging a bunch of meetings and not actually building pipeline? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I also prior to getting into this, right, I'm a big believer of what I call like the flight plan, right, which is what should pipeline coverage be for each rep, right? You look at start date, you look at tenure, they're ramping. You look at how many active deals they need to have in their pipeline. You have some assumptions on coverage, right, based on historicals, right? Just I'm giving you a simple kind of this flight plan that I call it. And then you look at, how many meetings do they need to basically convert? Like, what should the conversion rate be from meetings to op, right? And then I score against that, right? So this is not necessarily, I think you can call it a report or a scorecard, but right away, first off, it's never going to get to this point, right? Like Ole Munch, is that his name? Ollie Munch? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. No ops created, right? Forecast of 750K. Obviously, you're going to have to like dig it, right? Okay. First off, are they pacing to the right coverage, right? Are they pacing to the right conversion from op to pipeline, right? Or sorry, meetings to op creation, right? And then you look at quality of meetings, right? You look at the calendar integration is valuable. You dig into what meetings are they having, right? They haven't created, they've held 20 meetings. Obviously, none of these meetings have converted, right, to an opportunity. So it never should get to this stage, right? It should never, it doesn't have to get to here. So you're gonna have to look at this. So that's kind of my initial assessment. Is like, okay, do is everyone here in this report pacing to what I call the flight plan, right? And then can we get ahead? And this is where now, depending on tenure, right, the good reps, you obviously treat them differently. You still have to be rigorous, but weekly planning, right? This is a weekly tracking of the rhythm of the business, right? Which is you've had 5 meetings. Let's go through an audit. What happened to those meetings? Are they qualified? Okay, then let's talk about the entrance criteria into the pipeline. Are they not qualified? They've moved up. So in this case, he's at risk. And also, yeah, we're going to have to go figure out a way to audit those meetings that were held. The ICP, right? What happened? You held 20 meetings. You're talking to the wrong person. There's a lot to like dig into here.
So what I want to point out to folks is a few things. Is the language you use when you're presenting this and working with your sales manager does matter. I want to approach this as a learning opportunity and be able to have a good dialogue about what are the things you're looking for that, okay. I had some questions, and obviously I've proven I can't talk and do things at the same time. But basically, this is just temperature checks. So this is meant to be used on a regular basis throughout the quarter, so you can gauge how people are trending during the quarter. And this is also meant to take your Salesforce reports and summarize it here in this table. So I am not having people do data entry in this sheet ever. That is not my goal here. That is a terrible goal for me to have. What I want to clearly state is that each of these tabs are formatted so it works either in HubSpot or Salesforce or Zoho or whatever CRM you use. The nomenclature for the fields might be different, but this is meant to be a data export from your CRM. And then these formulas will look at the columns and auto calculate for you. So you're going to have to replace this with your sales reps' names. You're going to have to insert lines for more people. But as long as you run the reports with these headers, you should be able to use your CRM data as is and not ask people to be doing anything in this spreadsheet. This is just simply for me to take and put up on a screen and talk to Samuel about, here's what I'm seeing. I would love to understand what's the context behind this. Is there somebody who's disengaging, or are they just not using the system? So this is really a tool for both of us. And I just really wanted to clarify that. So, loving the Fargo references, by the way. So thoughts on building this for something in Salesforce. So Michael, that's a great point. The reason why it's not in Salesforce in a dashboard is because I can look at all of the metrics side by side and easily sort and look at that conditional formatting. I could set up something in a Salesforce dashboard. Let's see, it is in the chat, folks, but I'll go ahead and show it again. Oops. Share it again. And it's just opening for me, so I'll just hit the share button. Hold on. So the reason why it's not in Salesforce is just simply for the view it offers. And thank you, Brittany. I am not recommending that you don't still have Salesforce dashboards and you don't review those. This is just a really easy way to visualize it in one go. So Julia, how I define forecast integrity is basically I take the forecast that the reps and the sales leaders give at the beginning of the quarter, and then I look at where they hit quota. So this is something you'll calculate at the end of the quarter, probably not throughout, because you won't know until the end of the quarter, but you're comparing their initial forecast with what they booked. So we're almost at time. I want to make sure there's opportunity for you to ask questions of Ryan and Samuel, our sales management experts. All right. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Ryan, thank you for showing us your magical dashboard. I spotted some deals on there where I'm like, oh, those shouldn't be in qualify just from looking at it.
Good eye. Those are Easter eggs planted intentionally. So well done.
And we did have a question. The recording will be shared as well as a link back to that spreadsheet in the write-up. So I want to thank everybody for attending, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Samuel and Ryan, once again.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, everyone.